Hi there, and welcome to the most recent episode of Quakerly Conversations. I am Will Overholt, the Assistant Director of Alumni Parent Engagement here at Wilmington College, and I've got my partner in crime, Jameer Johnson, here. We are interviewing today with Travis Sheadler, a 2018 grad from Wilmington College who is an assistant professor. We have a great conversation with him planned. We're looking forward to talking about mental health resources, ways that you can impact your community, and then some of his favorite experiences and times at Wilmington College. Travis, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate the time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, again, I think I said in the intro, but a 2018 grad, so we're coming up on 10 years since you've been at Wilmington. So how does that feel in general?
It's so weird. In a way, it sounds correct because it feels like I haven't been at Wilmington in forever. Mm-hmm. And life has changed so much since Wilmington that 10 years sounds right. But it's also so wild that it was almost 10 years ago that I was in college or graduating from college.
Absolutely. Well, again, I was there during that time. Jameer was there a little bit during that time. But Tell us a little bit about your Wilmington College story, how you got to Wilmington, anything that kind of comes from those memories of Wilmington College.
Oh my gosh. So I remember in high school, I applied to so many colleges and universities. I don't remember how many, but I grew up in a small town not far from Wilmington, Goshen, Ohio, near Cincinnati. And I was hoping to play soccer in college. I stepped foot on Wilmington College's campus, and it just felt right. It was like that click that you get when something feels correct, when it feels like you're at a new home. So I just connected so well with the staff and the faculty and the other students that I felt like I belonged there. So I chose to go to Wilmington College. I was on the soccer team only for a season, even though that was like my big goal. But I ended up switching and running track for a few years. And I got super involved at Wilmington. I was involved in student government. My last year or so, I was student body president. I was a resident assistant. I was involved in other things too, but I'm kind of blanking on what all I was involved in. I know there was the plunge leadership camp over the summer, which really got me on campus early, got me connected with other students pretty early, and that was always super fun. When I think of Wilmington, I think of the times on the sand volleyball court outside. I was always out there whenever it was warm, and that was always so much fun. I think of random adventures with other RAs, whether we were on duty or not on duty. And I think of times with our student government too. I remember when I was student body president, we really tried hard to connect with the student body. I connected with faculty and staff, really trying to bridge the whole college together. And I also remember as a student government, I believe there were 7 of us, we would just go on random adventures, again, I'm going to use that word, to just really make sure that we were a family and a community and just enjoying our time together. And think of all of those special moments.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. Well, then talk about what you're currently doing now then, how that time at Wilmington College kind of transitioned you into the social work world.
Okay, so this is a whole story.
It's all right, we got the time.
Get it short. So when I started at Wilmington College, I wanted to be a teacher. And ultimately, I wanted to be like a guidance counselor or a principal for a high school at the time. Now, looking back, I could never do that. But at the time, that's what I wanted to do. I changed my major, though, way too many times. And mostly because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And then eventually, I had a conversation with one of my professors at the time, and I said, you know what, sport has always meant so much to me. I would love if there was a field for blending sport and psychology together, but that just doesn't exist. And she looked at me, she goes, Travis, there's a whole field. It's literally called sports psychology. And I was like, what? Like, mind blown. So I'm like, this is fascinating. So I started getting involved in sports psychology spaces. I started doing some research. I actually fell in love with research when I was at Wilmington College with Audrey Wagstaff, and it felt so fascinating to me to study something and learn more and contribute to social causes and the literature and all of that. So I started blending sport into my research by studying how can we increase interest in women's sports, and what does it mean to be on the refugee Olympic team? Like, how does that exposure and that visibility impact people's attitudes? So I was studying things like that while I was at Wilmington College, and I ended up going to University of Kentucky for my master's in sports psychology. And while I was there, a couple things happened. One, I became more in tune with myself as a gay man and became more interested in LGBTQ plus spaces, so things that are within and outside of sport. And at the same time, I realized that sports psychology, I wasn't really connecting with a lot of the field as much. So I was trying to figure out what direction should I take? I'm still interested in sports spaces, and especially how sport can be used as a vehicle for social change and can really improve people's lives and our communities. But I'm also interested in LGBTQ plus spaces outside of sport, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I started asking a few mentors while I was at University of Kentucky. Mentors as in people at University of Kentucky and people outside of UK. Started asking them, what are your thoughts? What do you think I can do? Every single person that I talked to had the exact same recommendation, and I thought it was the strangest thing in the world. Every single person recommended go to Ohio State for social work.
Really?
Very specifically. And I was like, this is so strange. So I guess let me check this out. And it was because at Ohio State, in their social work program, they had people studying sport social work as well as people studying LGBTQ plus social work. And there weren't a lot of places that had both going for them. So I was able to go to Ohio State, get my master's and my PhD and master's both being in social work, and study the best of both worlds. Study sports social work as well as LGBTQ plus social work. And then for my dissertation, I kind of blended it all together, and I studied LGBTQ plus sport spaces and how they can be leveraged for mental health and social action.
In the past 10 years from when you graduated to now, where would you say that we are at in that world of sports psychology or LGBTQ plus psychology when it comes to those things?
Everything ebbs and flows, right? There are pros and cons to whatever we're looking at. And it's the idea that history repeats itself in a way to where sometimes things will be getting better. And then other times, it feels like you were taking a major step back. So I don't know if there's necessarily yes, we're definitively getting better and not taking a step back at all. Because it's kind of a push and pull. Overall, if we're to look at the last 50 years, we're in a better spot now with LGBTQ plus people than what we were 50 years ago. I mean, we have landmark Supreme Court cases that allow for same-sex marriage, that have banned employment-based discrimination, but at the same time, we have threats of taking those rights away. So it's kind of a weird situation. And even beyond having those equal rights established, there are still other instances of discrimination and hate that continue to persist in different media spaces, as well as in interpersonal spaces. There are so many other laws besides marriage, for example, that can affect the rights of marginalized communities. One really prominent one that you'll hear in LGBTQ plus spaces is the right to adopt. And it depends on what state you're in, what community you're in, where you're wanting to adopt from. If you're wanting to adopt internationally, you also have to comply with laws in that country. So there's a possibility that same-sex couples can't adopt in certain spaces. So there are so many different laws that still need to be addressed for us all to really advance forward and in order for everyone to be safe and happy in their communities.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
So as your role as a professor, can you kind of talk about more of like your approach when it comes to teaching and research?
Yeah, so my number one value with teaching and research, even when talking about these really, really hard topics, is have fun. And it might sound so silly to a lot of people, but I think it's so important, because if we are not having fun, even talking about the hardest of topics, if we're not connecting with each other, then we can experience burnout, especially when we do talk about these really hard topics. We need to be able to learn how to be goofy and how to have adventures and community with each other. So for teaching, for example, I'm teaching research methods at the moment, and I have been trying to think of creative ways to help my students learn how to collect and analyze data. So I'm having them build paper airplanes and throw them and measure the distance, and then we can run different analyses based on the distance that they throw the paper airplane. It's not a great experiment, but it's just a fun thing to get your hands on something and to be able to connect with things. So that's just the first example that comes to my mind. I just think it's super fun to have fun. I think back to on a more serious level, I did some work around trying to ban conversion therapy, which is the idea of trying to change someone's sexual orientation and or gender identity. And conversion therapy has been basically found to be very problematic, very ethically problematic, but also very detrimental for people's mental health. So not the best practice, then we're trying to ban it. So it can be a very difficult topic to talk about, because when we're talking about conversion therapy, we inevitably talk about things like suicide. And that can take us to very dark spaces. But by being together and with people and focusing on that human connection and just enjoying the presence of others, even if we disagree with them, I think can help break down barriers and help us have conversations. Again, even if they are those difficult conversations.
Okay. And that kind of leads into my next question. You touched on a little bit of it here and there, but talking about, the individual, talking about somebody like me, what can I do, or what can somebody do in their community, to be an effective agents of change in their communities to promote healthier, safer, more inclusive environments?
Yeah, there are so many things that come to mind. The first thing that I would recommend that is more of a low-hanging fruit is taking, whether it's an online or in person, taking one of those workshops for mental health training. There are so many out there. There's QPR, that's question, persuade, and refer. I believe that's an hour to an hour and a half long training. And you can just take that to learn some of the basics of suicide prevention skills and intervention skills. You also could take mental health first aid training. That's literally what it's called. And also to help you learn some mental health 101, not expecting you to be a mental health expert, but training you as a community member and as a leader to better take care of the people around you. That's the first thing that comes to my mind for the more interpersonal level. Now, for other levels, we all can get engaged in our community. And a lot of times the biggest barrier is figuring out how to get engaged to try to fight for or against whatever cause or law that it might be. And my biggest recommendation is finding those organizations that match your values, that what is it that you care about, and then do some searching, use Google to find what organizations at the local or state level exist that work towards whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be something that is as polarizing as LGBTQ plus rights right now. It could be something like domestic violence. Maybe you really care about creating change in preventing domestic violence and providing more resources for those affected by domestic violence. Well, there is an organization, a statewide organization in Ohio that you could help volunteer with and be part of their advocacy coalition to try to spark statewide level changes in different policies in the community. And then there's also, if you're interested in mental health and suicide prevention, there are organizations like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I believe there's a chapter in Ohio that works on a lot of advocacy and fundraising to try to create changes in the community at the interpersonal level, the community level, and the policy level. So I recommend trying to find those organizations that match your values and are working on a cause that you really care about.
Awesome.
How does social media impact the mental health within the LGBTQ community? Because I do a lot of algorithms and measuring analytics, and oftentimes social media is also kind of like the catalyst that sparks change, good or bad sometimes. So just kind of wanted to know, how do you look at social media from a social work perspective?
Yeah, I really appreciate at the end there that you said a catalyst, good or bad, because that's something that we need to recognize, that this social media can be leveraged for good or for bad. For LGBTQ plus people specifically, I've worked on a handful of different research projects related to this topic, and it can be really empowering for LGBTQ plus people, because a lot of LGBTQ plus people don't grow up in environments that are safe for them, whether that's their home is not safe, or their school is not safe, to where there's a lot of bullying, or if they were to come out, there could be a lot of bullying or even physical violence in really, really bad situations. So we've seen a lot of LGBTQ plus people find community online, and they're able to use social media to learn more about themselves in a safe and healthy manner, and connect with other LGBTQ plus people to improve their mental health. However, because of a couple things, one being lack of safety in the home or in the school or in the community, it can also lead to LGBTQ plus young people using social media in kind of an unregulated way, where they're kind of going down the wrong path and finding the wrong people, right? So they can be a little bit vulnerable when they don't have that in-person support. So that can of course be potentially unhealthy. Now, a probably even larger concern than that would be people on social media, just like outside of social media, being threats to the safety of LGBTQ plus people. You see a lot of what we might call digital violence or cyberbullying against LGBTQ plus people. So a lot of hatred and a lot of threats to LGBTQ plus people regardless of their age. They could be young kids getting threatened by adults. And of course that's should be unacceptable. We should be able to enter the online world and be safe, but unfortunately that's not always the case. So it can be really good and really bad at the same time. I think the biggest thing that we need to do is make sure that in person everyone feels safe, so that way when something does come up on social media, that person, whether they're LGBTQ plus or not, has a safe person to go to, so that way they're not vulnerable and kind of sitting with themselves and feel trapped in their emotions and their feelings when something does come up on social media.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Awesome.
In this process of, you teaching and learning, what would you say is something that you learned about yourself in this journey?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question. Mm-hmm. I think for myself, tapping more into my LGBTQ plus identity and feeling more authentically myself, I realized that like my personality, I know we all change, but my personality hasn't deviated so much. It's just I'm tapping more into, trying to think of the right word here, I guess, being more free, being more willing to like let my guard down, if you will, and not feeling so uptight or feeling, again, just guarded and feeling like I have to hide anything. I can be freely myself, and that itself is mentally freeing as well, to where you don't feel trapped. You feel like it's easier to trust other people. You feel like you can experience joy and love, and sometimes it can feel very difficult or feel like that's not possible. Again, thinking for young LGBTQ plus people out there, it can feel like you that experiencing joy and love and community is not something for us until we see it and we experience it ourselves and we open up and are more free.
Rephrasing this question, how did you find ways to insert joy or little pockets of sunshine while going through all that, and maybe have something to look forward to, if that makes any sense?
Yeah. It's, for me, it was mostly about just connecting with other people. Mm-hmm. I remember when I went to University of Kentucky, my very first friend there was another gay man, and he is still friends with him to this day. And finding those people who can support you through the process, can be your people, is really a key aspect of finding that joy. Of course, there's therapy as well. I would always recommend. But yeah, there's that, and then being active. And active doesn't necessarily have to mean going to the gym every day. For me, I love going to the gym, so that is part of what it means for me, but it doesn't have to mean that for everybody. I think like now, I love going to go play pickleball. I've just started playing 5-6 months ago. But I'm loving it, and I feel myself be lighter because I'm involved in a healthy hobby that also involves a little bit of competition, but also community. Yeah. So it leverages some of those strengths and really touches on some key aspects of health.
I'm glad that you mentioned being active, because I was going to ask you about this, because you sent this to us, so I feel okay asking. Yeah. Rupturing your middle finger in the 2024 National Championship kickball, LGBTQ plus kickball, that is, right?
Yeah. So,
Tell that story.
Of course. Stonewall Sports is an LGBTQ plus organization. So it's a adult recreational sport organization built by and for LGBTQ plus people and allies. To be more specific, there are chapters all over the country, and I found it in Columbus. I moved to Columbus during the COVID-19 pandemic when everything was basically locked down. So the first, I don't know, maybe 9-10 months of living in Columbus, I was basically locked in an apartment by myself. It was awful. But I happened to connect with someone, I guess this goes back to social media, happened to connect with someone on social media who I've never met, and they reached out and said, hey, I think this would be something that you'd be interested in. Things are opening back up, and Stonewall Sports is a cool place. So I'm like, oh, that sounds neat, playing kickball with a bunch of other LGBTQ plus people, okay. So I started to, and I ended up falling in love with my community there, with Columbus, because I connected with so many more people, and I got to be active and just do something that was fun and goofy. And I learned through playing in Columbus's Stonewall Sports chapter that they also have a national championship every year that all of the chapters get together. So I joined a national championship team in a travel team in 2024 to go to the national championship. We had no expectations on how it would go, and we ended up doing amazing, and we ended up winning the national championship. But along the way, where to even start? So along the way, one, I lost my voice, and I feel like that's important for this conversation.
Okay.
And and then two, we were in the quarterfinals, and we were probably playing our toughest opponent. Was in the quarterfinal, and I was playing in the outfield. I remember they had bases loaded and they had 2 outs, and whoever was up launched that ball, and somehow anybody would have thought it was going to be a grand slam and we were losing that game. Somehow I reached my hands over my head and somehow caught the ball. And I looked down. Well, I didn't look down yet. I was like, looked over to my teammates, and every single teammate was like, just jaw dropped. How did you catch that? And I'm like, I have no idea, but I feel like I caught it on my knuckle. I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but it felt like I caught it on my knuckle. And again, remember, I lost my voice. So by the time we get to like our bench, like the sideline or whatever you want to call it, I looked down at my hand, and it looked like I had an ET middle finger. Like, it looked broken for sure. Apparently it was ruptured, but I had no idea what was going on. Like, instead of my middle finger being straight, it's like from this knuckle to this knuckle, it was like a U, and this knuckle down was like out that way. It looked broken in every place possible. Somehow it wasn't. But me losing my voice, I couldn't even scream or anything. And I just looked at it, and I was screaming without a voice, and I was like, it was so funny, like in hindsight, but I was like, I couldn't communicate at all because I barely had a voice. So I just like ran over, and I'm like, oh, I think I broke my finger. So rushed to urgent care. So I was no longer able to play the rest of the tournament, but we ended up only winning that game by 1 run. So my team insisted on telling me that if it wasn't for that catch, we wouldn't have even made it to the semifinals.
There you go.
So I still insist, even though I wasn't in the game, I am a national champion.
You did what needed to be done. Yep.
And it was all thanks to a ruptured middle finger.
And what's great is if they give you championship rings, you don't have to put on your middle finger. You can put it on your ring finger.
Right. Well, to make it even better, I had to wear a splint on my middle finger of all fingers, and I had to wear it for I think 8 weeks. So I wasn't able to really do much of anything for 8 weeks, which feels so silly because it was just a finger. You don't realize how much you need one finger until you can't use it. But I was cleared to play sports again, and dumb me thought I got cleared to play sports again, so let's go play volleyball. Of all sports, when you just get cleared to play with your middle finger being ruptured. Oh my gosh, I played so many games. I think it was the 5th game. I hit the ball and I knew immediately. I was like, oh, I did it again. I did it again. I looked down. Sure enough, it was like ET all over again with my middle finger. And I'm like, oh, so I was like, had to be out for another 8 weeks or so.
Wow.
It was a rough second half of the year.
And I mean, I don't even, like, there's probably no surgery, right? You just have to let it heal as is, or
so
is it?
They can do surgery, but surgery isn't really, at least what they told me, it wasn't necessary, at least for my case.
Gotcha.
That really it's just put a splint on it to make sure that it's stable and it'll heal on its own. Every now and then I can feel something like tighten up in there, and I was like, oh, well, like, let's put some tape in on that and make sure it doesn't bend.
Secure it, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, that's really funny.
The
That's a good
dumbest
story.
injury.
That's a good story.
Dumbest injury, I swear.
Travis, I think that's really all that we've got today. I mean, truthfully, I really appreciate the time. Again, a lot of really good stuff, a lot of good resources too. I think, you know, regardless of LGBTQ plus versus non, you know, I think it's important that people recognize their communities. And I really appreciated what you had to say about finding your community, because I feel like a lot of people have that experience at Wilmington. They have it in other places, but that's really the cornerstone of finding who you are. And I really appreciate that. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And if anyone is wanting to follow up with me, of course, I just want to mention that they are welcome to. I am on LinkedIn. It's also easy to find my email address, but it's just tsheadler@charlotte.edu. But happy to have anyone follow up if something resonates with them and they have questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we can do is even put in contact info, so we'll just drop it down there. So awesome. Again, Travis, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you. The next time that you're back on campus, we'd love to have you, give you a tour and show you around a little bit. I know it's been coming up on 10 years. That's crazy. So
it sure is.
But again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And again, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.